Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. It is Friday, May 15th, and we're in the 11 o'clock hour. This is our daily Facebook Live interview, COVID Conversations, which we're having with a variety of people all across Westchester County that in one way, shape, or form are involved in this outbreak of coronavirus and in the response, whether it's on the health side, the volunteer service side, governmentally, or within the changing and the reopening of our economy. Today, our guest is Alisa Kesten, longtime friend and outstanding executive director of Volunteer New York, which has done yeoman's work in a host of different areas. And now, during the COVID-19 crisis, has stepped up in a really professional and profound way. So, Alisa, thank you very much for coming on board today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, George, and for giving me the opportunity to talk about volunteer power and the role that volunteers play that I think is very obvious to all in responding to COVID-19.
Well, for those who don't know about Volunteer New York, give us the elevator speech, assume we're in a long elevator, and tell us about the organization and then focus on how you're adjusting in a COVID-19 world.
Right, so we'll wash our hands after we take this elevator ride
Exactly
and
right.
touching all the buttons. So Volunteer New York is an organization that has been getting people off the sidelines to take action for local nonprofits for 70 years. And a lot of people don't realize that we've been around for 70 years because during that time, we may have done business under a variety of names, but we were founded in 70 years ago in Westchester by a group of women who wanted to make it easy for people to take action and get involved. And that's what we are doing now and what we have been doing. We work with hundreds of local nonprofits. We work with businesses, governments, groups, families. And so we really have our finger on the pulse of how volunteers can be used to solve problems. We're also part of a national, now a global network, Points of Light. So we are aware of what's going on, and we know particularly what happens when a community faces a disaster. Right now, our globe is facing a pandemic, which is something of a magnitude we haven't seen. But what we do see is what we always see, and that's that people, when they can, as soon as they feel comfortable, raise their hands and say, what can I do? And Volunteer New York is here to help manage that and make sure that people who want to do something are directed where the real needs are locally.
Now, what do you see as the pressing needs right now? And particularly the pressing needs that can be addressed best by the volunteer effort and activity as organized?
Well, one of the things that we've seen that has changed is we needed to go virtual. Not only did we need to go as other nonprofits and businesses did, but we had to come up with ways that people could still help and do so either completely separate or with good, smart physical distancing following guidelines. So the needs that we see, frankly, were always there, maybe under the surface, and a lot of people didn't realize it. And now it's very clear. It's clear to people that right here in our own community, there are people and families who are hungry. They've been hungry. They've been having to come up with ways to creatively get to the end of each month. Now, more than ever, we see that food insecurity is hitting a lot more people. We know that education inequality, delivery has always been an issue. Now, with schools closed to physical classrooms, we see the struggle that some families are having because they don't have the resources to support. Volunteerism is an answer to help in that. It's not the answer. No one sector has the answer, but there's no way, I don't think, that we can address hunger, that we can address social distancing and the mental health difficulties that come with that. We can't address education issues without volunteer power really digging in. And so we've been working really hard with our partners to determine what are the things that can be done virtually, what are the things that can be done with social distancing. And frankly, we're going to need to continue to develop those because we're going to need to rely on that kind of support for many, many months to come.
Well, we understand, I think all of us do, that we're in the middle of a public health crisis, the likes of which we've never experienced in our lifetime. But we're also seeing now the financial crisis that we have, which is also not like anything we've seen in our lifetime. And as much as we may want to resist saying it, I think this is probably now the closest thing to what started the Great Depression as we're experiencing right now. But interestingly, Volunteer New York has stepped into the breach on that. You've done some volunteer work working with our economic development team to try to help deal with some of your skilled volunteers and the needs that small businesses have. So perhaps you want to talk about that initiative as an example of how broad your reach is with volunteerism.
I think it shows the reach and it shows the partnership with county government and with businesses. So Westchester County surveyed small businesses to see what the needs were. 700 entities responded, and they said that they particularly needed help in filling out and applying for PPP and other SBA programs that might be available. So then the county said, well, let's see if we can get maybe 30 volunteers to step forward, and 300 people raised their hand and said that they would like to help. So at that point, I think there was a need to call in the guard and the professionals who know how to manage this, and Volunteer New York stepped forward and using our tools and technology, helped develop the system so that we could match volunteers and small businesses, volunteers with those skill sets. And so we matched over 170 individuals who said, yes, I can help. As of now, we've helped 63 small businesses. We got an email the other day from someone who received PPE and credited the volunteer who helped complete those forms. I think that is just the tip of the iceberg of how skilled volunteers can be supporting small businesses as they get back. There's going to be a need for marketing support, financial support, strategic development support, project management. And those are things that skilled volunteers can do. And that is a way for people who may be finding themselves furloughed, I hope not loss of job, but volunteering has always been a way to keep your resume fresh, to learn new skills, to increase your network, and to keep feeling positive while you do it. And that is the key to getting back into the workforce and doing so successfully.
And you've shown over the course of your involvements here in this county, Volunteer New York being the most prominent recent one, but other activities you've done throughout the course of time, that you fight through the difficulties and you get to success. But for all of us, no matter how optimistic we are, there's still some nagging worries. There's still some things that we look at as being longer term issues and concerns. And they're hopefully counterbalanced by the things that give us hope. And since you've been such an astute observer of where we are in this community of ours of Westchester County, what do you worry about? What do you find hopeful?
Well, I think that I have the same worries personally that we all do. Health and safety of my loved ones, making sure that I am not carrying any kind of virus and infecting anyone else. I want my office to be back running fully. I'd like everybody to be back together. And I worry that we're not going to be able to do that as soon as we want. And at the same time, there's going to be a pressure to get the economy going. So I worry, as I said, about food insecurity, but I do worry about childcare, and I worry about education. I think those are critically important if you want parents to be able to get back to work and not have to worry about their children and where their children are and what they're doing. We're going to have to figure out childcare, and I'd like to see that become more of a focus. I worry that for the nonprofit sector, and certainly for Volunteer New York, that some of our supporters, individuals, businesses, government is going to be strapped, but some who will think that volunteering is something that can be put on hold until it can be done in the same way it's been done, with physical togetherness. And we simply cannot wait for that. The needs of the nonprofits, the challenges that face the people nonprofits serve are not on hold. And so I worry that there is a need to wait to see if we can do it the way we used to. We have to be much more creative and nimble. The good news is, and the things that give me hope, is that once again, that spirit of helping others has risen up. It does every single time. It didn't take long in New Rochelle, where I live, for people to be helping people right in the center of what was the toughest area in the beginning. And that still continues. I think people are going to get more comfortable with technology. And I think that's going to open up ways to level playing fields for people that didn't exist. And I really think that's important. I think we're going to come out of this, as we always do, more connected. And when we are more connected, we're better able to face the next challenge. There will always be a challenge around the corner, but we will be better. And frankly, that's why Westchester is responding so well now, because we are a community, unlike some, that has always had a strong respect between sectors, among sectors, and support. And I think that is serving us really well now. That gives me a lot of hope. And I also think we're very fortunate to have an organization like Volunteer New York. It doesn't exist like this in most places. And so I'm very proud of the organization and the professionals and the board who are making sure that it's going to continue for another 70 years.
Well, you've done much to make that mission happen over your tenure in this job. Just one other philosophical thing before we have a closeout conversation. There's an interesting strain in American thinking about the role of the individual versus the role of the community. And I think what you've described here in Westchester County is accurate, that Westchester has a very strong sense of community identification and volunteerism that's sort of baked into the cake. The people who live here, choose to live here, could live other places, and could live in the city, could live further out, or in a different, in a different type of environment. But that strain of individualism in the American experience can involve not only the individual drive to achieve within a capitalistic system and that just persistence that comes with an individual personality, but it can also involve selfishness. It can also involve an unwillingness to see the community's needs. How do you see, is that a constant battle that we're always going to have to deal with? How do we channel individualism, or how do we shape individualism so that it's productive, but it doesn't go to the excesses in which it becomes me for me and forget about the other guy?
I love people who say, you got to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And I challenge anyone who has succeeded to tell me that there was no mentor, no person who gave a kind word of encouragement at the right time, no opportunity at all, that they did it completely on their own. We are a people as humans who definitely, the survival instinct is very strong, but so is the community instinct and the wanting to be together. And so I think that is, very true now. I think one of the things that has been revealed in this is that, yes, we are all in this together, but not at the same level. I am so fortunate to be able to sit here with you and have a conversation about my organization. I have a job. I'm calling you. I have a phone. I have electricity. I have food. There are people right here in our own community who don't, through no fault of their own. And this is something that I think has been revealed, and we need to be very humble about it. I think we all have an opportunity to leave a legacy. And I think the legacy has to include giving back and being a mentor, a supporter, an advisor, not a handout, pulling up so that someone can reach their own potential. Like I hope you have been able to, I have been able to, our children and grandchildren. It's just not possible to go it completely alone.
Well, to close out, Alisa, the end of June will be an interesting time for you. I understand you've called it a rewirement of your life, and that's what I think is terrific. That at every stage of life, there's a new challenge to come, and you have a chance to, if not close a chapter, at least complete a chapter of that life. And you're going to do that in terms of Volunteer New York. Tell us about what June brings for you personally and what June brings for the organization.
Well, I have been planning my rewirement, and I call it that because I'm not sure what retirement means. I'm going to be doing something a little differently. I believe very strongly that there comes a time when fresh ideas and perspectives are absolutely needed. And I couldn't be prouder that Volunteer New York is going to be led by Jeanette Gisbert, who herself has been involved with the organization for a dozen years and is now off in a very unique fellowship position with Global Points of Light, and will be coming back and bringing that perspective. I think it's important for leaders to be ready to lead by going and leading somewhere else. And so I'm going to do that. Might just lead my husband around the backyard for a while, but we'll see. I will say that personally, I had a vision of how the last few months at Volunteer New York would play out, and this is not the way it's playing out. I have a feeling that rather than sort of gliding off into the sunset, I'm going to be like a train that all of a sudden hits a wall on June 30th, which is sort of an arbitrary date. And I can tell you, George, that as you know, volunteerism is so important to me. And this organization has been a great part of my life and purpose for 15 years. Once I completed Leadership Westchester and joined the board and had that opportunity to be with you there, I will always be connected. And I will always be here for the community to serve in whatever way I can. I believe that I have a lot more footprints to leave, and I'm looking forward to figuring out new ways of doing that.
Alisa, we're pretty confident that you've got more footprints to leave, and we're very proud and appreciative of the work you've done with Volunteer New York. And we look forward to the next chapter in your life as we all try to figure out what comes next in light of the current day. We've been talking with Alisa Kesten, who is currently Executive Director for Volunteer New York. And we encourage you to go to the website for Volunteer New York, spell out the word New York, and take a look at the different programs and services they're involved in. And if you can give a helping hand in any way possible with your time, with your resources, they would certainly welcome it. Alisa, thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, George.
We'll be back at 2 o'clock again today for our daily update on the status of the coronavirus. I'll be up in Yorktown with Matt Slater, the supervisor of the town of Yorktown at Yorktown Town Hall. And we'll give you the latest statistics, the progress that we're making toward dealing and managing as best as we can with this virus, and some other issues that will be pending that will be helpful to you. We usually have these updates, these Facebook Live interviews, and the updates at 2 o'clock on weekdays. So after our 2 o'clock today, we'll be off for the weekend, and then we'll see you again on Monday with another one of these interviews. So for right now, stay safe. We'll see you at 2 o'clock.